advertising for that. And 7, to keep in touch with the brand. It's about actually having compelling content across the path to purchase and not in any one of them. And that needs to be further understood in terms of what kind of content is something which is received better by the people. And this is where I'm showing you the difference between bought, owned, and earned media and the influences that it plays. Now, clearly, what we are seeing is the TV is not dead. It'll never be. Let's get real on that one. I mean, we can have great presentations that we make on PowerPoint that says TV, rest in peace, and all that jing bang, but TV is going to remain out there. It will play certain roles at certain times. But what is interesting, while TV plays its role in certain places, what is important is that earned media across the board, which pretty much ties up with the stories that we've been trying to tell earlier about the fact that you need to have content being shared or circulated by peer communities among themselves. Content that they want to share about you, because that is what people are going to be listening to. 3 out of 5 people search information online about a product or brand immediately after reading it in a newspaper or magazine offline. Now, this is interesting, but that's fine. How do they do it? 81% on PC, 25% on mobile, 51% on tablet. I looked at this number and I said, this is a story out here. 25% on tablet, on mobile phone, when mobile phone penetrations in Malaysia is way larger than PC penetrations, and even 3G connectivity is fairly large out here, then what's really happening out there? What's really going wrong with mobiles? So I went a little further out there. And we asked them that for social networks, what are the various access points they use? And we got PC, mobile, and tablet coming together. Fine. Then we looked at some other things, multimedia, entertainment, pre-purchase and browsing, shopping. And what did we start seeing? We started seeing that mobile seems to be dropping as we go along. And then I thought, very rarely do I do that. That if you think about this, that Facebook or other social media applications are easily available on your mobile phones, right? Even things like YouTube, etc. are available. But the minute we go in things like pre-purchase and browsing and shopping, you need optimized websites that are working on mobile phones or tablets. Are we missing an opportunity here? This is a huge opportunity, and we seem to be declining as we move into internet websites, etc. And it is across the paths to purchase. So this is one opportunity clearly that needs to be looked at. More so in the context where a higher percent of people would be happy doing all the internet surfing via their mobiles. And we also know about penetrations out here. They are fairly large. We cannot miss this opportunity. A fifth, use it to receive information about products and services. Mobile phones I'm talking about. Another fifth, or the same fifth, would share their current location for better services. A fifth again would find out more information on products when in store. Mobile, talking about mobile. Yeah? Opportunity with what you can do on the mobile. And one third actually saying they will do it and use it more often than what they are currently doing. Now clearly, the foundations for location-based services in Malaysia are laid. If we don't start tapping into right now, we'll probably be missing the boat. So we might as well start tapping on this. So there are different leverage points across the paths to purchase, as I showed you earlier, for different things. We need to invest across owned and paid media strategically across the paths to purchase. We need to start thinking about, and I've seen a lot of good websites that people want to access, or rather I want to access and I can't find it optimized for the mobile browser. Optimize that for multi-screens, including tablets, including mobile phones, and lead and drive the adoption of location-based services. We are pretty much ready for it. Nascent, but ready. That will help you maximize the opportunity to engage across the path to purchase. Cliched by the Coca-Cola company. Okay, now I've given you 3 stories in terms of how you can engage them. But the fact is that as we go along, just the way content is going to change or should change, the mediums within digital should change and will change. I think the metrics that you use in research and the way you're understanding your consumers ought to also change. Now, in a world of influence that we are in right now, are you today measuring something called the talk worthiness of your brand? Or you're still stuck up with capturing brand preference in a very generic sense? Are you capturing talk worthiness of your brand? Or are you catching share of talk? Diffusion. What's the extent of diffusion that's happening for the brand? Are you capturing that? Or are you capturing the extent and nature of the engagement? What's the kind of engagement? How many hours? Are you capturing stuff of that nature? If you're not probably adequately understanding the digital consumer. And are you earning their time, which is really the new currency, and creating brand evangelists? Because that's really what you'll need now in this new economy. So to sum this up, I think my 20 minutes are getting over. To sum this up, while we have talked a lot and there's a whole lot of opportunity out there, the reality is that we are only scratching the surface right now. There is so much more in terms of opportunities. Whether it's gaming and branding opportunities within gaming. The whole idea of e-commerce, Digital Life study also has a lot about e-commerce and what are the options out there. But this is a whole area that we can get into right now. First, let's get our path to purchase and optimize our content for the various platforms out there. Near-field communication, an area that's already picking up. Again, something that will pick up more and more with mobile phones coming into play. And gamification. I mean, that's another way we can engage our consumers better. These are just some examples out there. They're not composite, but there are all ways how things will evolve even further. And if I was to leave you behind with something, it would be perhaps this, that there is no dilemma as such. The only challenge, if at all, is the diversity of the opportunities that are in front of us. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time with us. Source is Digital Life. Look forward to catching up with you guys outside. Thank you.
Give it up for Rajesh Kumar, please, one more time. Thank you. Thank you, Rajesh. You've given us a lot to think about in such a short span of time. Now, we'd like to touch on another subject, which is a growing trend, a growing reality in our digital world, which is big data. As you know, we are overwhelmed and bombarded by data, and we are living in a time when it makes a lot of impact on our decisions in the media scene. So for that, I would like to please welcome onto stage the Managing Director of Karat Media Malaysia, Mr. Roy Tan.
Good morning, everyone. Just to say that Ham has a sense of humor to put the data guys up front is actually quite amazing, considering it's a Monday morning and half of you would preferably be in bed. Well, I was thinking to myself, talking about big data first thing in the morning doesn't seem like a good idea. And it is very, very early days for us in Malaysia to talk about it. So I thought I'd take a very slow stroll through it. Because normally, A, I talk way too fast, and B, because of that, no one really understands what I'm talking about. So today, I'm talking a little bit about big data, but to start interestingly about big data, I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell you a very interesting story. I'd like you to meet this guy. His name is Andrew Paul. Normally, I would ask, have you met this guy? But I would bet money on it that none of you have met him. Now, the interesting question about Andrew Paul is, what has he got to do with these 6 items? Unscented lotions, calcium, magnesium, and zinc supplements, soap, cotton balls, hand sanitizers, and washcloths. Now, all of you are looking blankly right now, and that's okay. Now, the interesting about this guy is that he's a statistician, and he works for these guys. Now, as you know, for a lot of retailers out there, one of the most interesting things or most important things for them to target is for parents with young kids. Now, the interesting thing about parents with young kids is that they actually have a database about all these kinds of buyers. So then they take the data and then they work it backwards to about 3 months to 4 months before that happens. And they found that women in their second trimester bought these items. Now, for those of you who are married and have got children, you probably realize some of these stuff because women would buy these stuff because, like unscented lotion, is because as they get nausea through their pregnancy, this is a good item to buy. So the question is, what exactly did Target do with it? Now, they took all these items and started targeting their consumer database, those who have bought these items with things such as baby cribs, strollers, and so on. That was an interesting CRM program that they did. However, one of the problems that they did when they sent it out was that they had an interesting phone call. One of the parents called up Target because they said, my daughter got this in the mail. She's still in high school and you're sending her coupons for baby clothes and cribs. Are you trying to encourage her to get pregnant? So can you imagine you're a customer service representative of Target and you've been yelled at by this customer because you've been sending coupons. So obviously Andrew Pohl is wrong, isn't he? Well, here's the thing. So he says, okay, let me get my manager to call you back. So, they scurry around the food chain. Eventually the manager calls back. And when he called back, this is what the parent had to say. I had a talk with my daughter. It turns out there's been some activities in my house I haven't been completely aware of. She's due in August and I owe you an apology. Now you might think, gosh, Roy is really making this up. Well, just to make sure I'm not making this up, I thought I pulled this out for you. This is actually an article in Forbes. How Target figured out a teen girl was pregnant before her father did. Now, this is a great story because this is the story about big data, even though it's coached behind this interesting story about unscented lotions. So, because of that, I thought I share with you guys, even though it's such an early days to talk a little bit about it, in terms of what big data is all about. Well, big data is basically huge amount of data sets out there that grow so large that you cannot do it without with on-hand database management tools. So for those of you guys out there who think that you live and die by Excel, well, your life's about to change because these data sets are so huge, Excel files can't handle it, and you really need great software and technology to manage these complicated sets of data. So I'm going to share the following things for you guys today. I'm going to share what I call 1 plus 3, which is something to think about it if you're an agency person. And I'm going to share with you 3 plus 1, the implications of it. So I'm going to start with about the first thing. The first thing, let's contextualize data in terms of 3 things. A lot of you know about this by now, which is bought data, or bought media, owned media, and earned media. So bought media such as print advertising, TV, online, out of home, so on and so forth. Owned data, corporate websites, portals, so on and so forth. Earned media, social media, Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. Now I'm going to share with you the data that you get out of it. So on bought data, you've got your DSP data, you've got your media mine data, you've got your double-click data, you've got your traditional media data, courtesy of Nielsen, you've got your interesting out-of-home data, your search data, and your social data. Now, in terms of owned data, we're going to look at things like your Google Analytics, your web trends, Yahoo Web Analytics, brands, social pages on Facebook, retail data, call center data, and sales data. Well, that's a lot of stuff, right? But those 2 are actually the small stuff. The big stuff is actually in earned data, and the stuff that you actually pick up from your consumers. Radiant 6, Brandtology, Meltwater Buzz, the whole gamut of Facebook and Twitter and other social networking sites. So imagine that world of all these 3 data sets all in one. So imagine that, the first thing. How do you manage it? Boy, technology. If you don't have a data platform to manage all these things, it cannot be done. Why? Because can you imagine all the APIs that you need to stroll in to pull all the data into one platform to manage all the data sets that you have. The bot data, if you don't have an API for all the bot data from your Radian 6, from your media mine and so on and so forth, imagine if you don't have an API for Google Analytics, if you don't have one from your web trends, if you don't have one from your Facebook account that you're managing for your clients, how are you going to pull all this data together? Or let alone your earned data from all the Radian 6 and all the social data that you spend good money on to pull it all together. So you got to have all the technology to put it in one space for you to then have a look at it. So as we talk about the technology, you cannot help but talk about the people behind it. You know, how many of you actually watch Mad Men? Boy, that's quite a fair few of you. You know, the old days, they said it's the madmen who ruled the days of advertising of yore, the scotch-drinking, hard-charging advertising professionals of yesterday. Well, argumentatively, they also say, what is the madman of tomorrow? And some of them say it's math men, those Red Bull drinking people who stay up late hours crunching data. So what is it? Is the future of media agencies going to be madmen or math men? People who tell great stories, or people who churn the data, who can actually really look at it and see what are the impact that the brand has on the business. So is it madman versus mathman? The future has yet to be seen. But if you have the right kind of people, my answer has always been a bit of both. You can't have one without the other. The third thing I'm going to talk about is collaboration. Why am I going to talk about collaboration? Well, I've thought about 3 different medias: bought media, owned media, and earned media. All 3 spaces exist traditionally in silos. For those of you who work in agencies, whether it's creative, media, digital, PR, social, direct, now the list can go on and on. All the data that I've talked about traditionally are always siloed between all the different agencies that you have in the different groups and all the different client sets that you have. Now, can you imagine the amount of collaboration if you're going to have all that data pulled together to actually make sense out of it? That actually requires a huge amount of trust from agencies with their clients to be able to manage it. Not too long ago, I was having a conversation with a CRM agency, and they said to me, "Hey Roy, what do we do with something like this? One of my clients' agencies asked me to feed them the data. Should we or should we not?" Now, can you imagine, because everything is so siloed, how are we going to ensure, if we're going to understand the future in as holistically as we possibly can, that we can collaborate if everybody is so siloed? So for agencies out there, it's actually a really tough question because, and for clients out there, do they want to share? Well, the whole future is that if you don't share, you're screwed, frankly, because you only get one page out of the whole equation and you have to collaborate. So that's the first 3 things I want to talk about, which is 1 plus 3. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the implications of this technology. What does it mean? And why would you want to do it? Because it seems like a whole lot of hard work. Well, 3 plus 1. I'm going to talk about a 3 first. Well, if you have implications of putting all of those 3 together for the first time, you are mining data that you could never possibly have seen. Now, the good example is when you saw the target example with Andrew Paul earlier. If you integrate, you now can do deep mining that you can never would have possibly done in many years ago. Now you can. You can see how them all relate together. For the first time, you will actually have unified insights. Now, I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. Now, you know, one ring to rule them all and in darkness bind them. Now you can. You can see all that data sets pulled together and you can get great insights as you get multitudes of data funneling into what you think and where you think that the brand is going. And because of that, you will now get unparalleled innovation. Innovation that you possibly never would have seen, as a good example, which is the second trimester research that I shown earlier. Innovation that allows you to do things never have you seen before and never would you have done before. If you look at bought data and owned data and earned data, consumers will then be able to see, or you will now be able to see how consumers are thinking across all 3 sectors. Now I'm going to share with you a story. The story is that a lot of you do silo data at the moment, and a lot of us do that also at the moment. Right now, we've tracked bought data leading to own data, and we can see how when we spend advertising leads to sales increases by our clients on own sites. Right now, I've had a study done by a colleague of mine out of Europe, and it is an interesting story for a beverage client. And that interesting story found that they actually had a successful beverage business. Their profits were growing, and then one day they decided to have a Facebook account. And when they had the Facebook account, they decided to populate it with content about their brand, just fun content that actually relates back to the brand. When they did that, we had the good fortune of doing an econometric study on their own, from their earned leading to their own, see whether they actually generated sales increases. We found that their profits increased by 20% year on year just by the inclusion of earned content on Facebook, which is purely content, fun information, had nothing to do with sales. It was almost prima facie evidence that if you like something, you buy it more. Now, just now I mentioned 3 plus 1, the implications. So what is the last implication? There's actually a couple, even though it says 1. The first thing I'm going to talk about is, now imagine bought data, owned data, and earned data. Now, if you imagine the world where you manage that together with your CRM data, can you imagine if you're a client, if you put in and manage it with your CRM data, you actually know your consumer. If you actually know your consumer and you actually manage that together with your bought and owned, you now can do micro communications. When I say micro communications, you now can dovetail your communications almost as if it was tailored for that consumer. And that technology allows us today to do many things. You can then target and silo. I'm going to give you an example. So imagine your bought data, your own data, and your earned data. And you have these humongous sets of data out there. And then you find an interesting story. You find that your friends or this consumer that you're targeting who spends a lot of time with your website, A, is a fan of a place in the Philippines, a particular place in the Philippines. And you also find out that their friends recently traveled to a particular hotel there. You can now target them like free night stay, which we found out earlier that consumers really love, and that was a real surprise, at Discovery Shores in Boracay. And you can possibly find that certain people are getting married, and they probably need a hand there, and wedding packages from Mandarin Oriental, and you can time it because you know that it's in August, just like the example earlier, because now you can target way, way in advance. So with all these huge data sets, it gives you great opportunity to actually target and mine your consumers in this big wall of data out there. Thank you.
Yes, get ready for another round of applause for Roy, please. Thank you, Roy. That was a very tough subject, but anyway, I'm so happy you touched on it because it's a reality out there. Having said that, I have some friends here from IBM who will be more than happy to talk to you about how to manage big data. They've really made a quantum leap in that space. Okay, moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. Next, we have a gentleman whose name not many people know how to pronounce, except me. I've been well practiced on how to pronounce his name. He's going to talk to you about something very exciting, and as far as I know, it's highly PNC. So this is the first time he'll be sharing it with all of us. And let me get his presentation in order so that we can give him a rousing welcome onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, the Managing Director of OMD and PhD Malaysia, Mr. Andreas Wayazaki.
Good morning, everyone. Does this work? Yes, it does. Great. Just give me 1 second to set this up. And there we go. Thank you, Ham. Thank you, everybody, for being here. In fact, I don't think there would be any better way than the first two speakers in order to segue to this presentation. It's a tough one, and as usual, when I have the tough ones, I have to prepare it in written form. So what I would like to do in the next 30 minutes or less is to take you to a journey and a deep dive into the future. Now, I would like to start by giving you some perspective. There exists a computer that can perform 4,000 computations per second. That's the IBM 1401, and currently that computer sits in a museum. This is partly because the computer that sits in your smartphone today can carry out more than 1 billion computations per second. Now, this exponential increase in computational power has changed our world, and of course, it has changed the world of communications as we know it. We are now living in what is widely known as the information age. In the 70s and the 80s, we built our computers. In the 90s, we built our networks, and in the first decades of this century, we are building our social empires. Right now, 1 in every 2 people in the developed world is connected into a social network. Globally, there are now 1.2 billion social networkers. In fact, I should rephrase that because it's wrong.